if you're in the hotel or restaurant business, especially in food and beverage, that having a really solid team, it's not just a nice thing to have. It
Yeah,
really makes all the difference.
absolutely.
Today, we're going to deep dive into some insights from someone named Maurice, who knows food and beverage inside and out.
Okay.
We're going to look at how to actually build that kind of team, the kind that's tight-knit and innovative and ready for anything.
Sounds good.
And the cool thing is Maurice is sharing his own experiences. So this is like real-world wisdom you can use.
Right.
This isn't theory.
Yeah, Maurice is all about the human side of food and beverage.
Okay.
He says the team is like the core, the beating heart of it all. So
Makes sense.
we're going to pull out his key lessons on how you can create that same resilience, that communication, that culture of fresh thinking within your own teams.
All right, let's jump right in.
Yeah.
One of the things Maurice talks about that I found kind of surprising is celebrating effort, even when you don't necessarily get that win.
Interesting. So what he's saying is that recognizing how hard your team worked, regardless of the outcome, that's huge for morale.
Okay.
He really emphasizes that even if you miss a specific goal, acknowledging that effort can actually make your team stronger.
So it's not about like pretending everything went perfectly.
Not at all.
It's about recognizing the work that went in.
Exactly.
He actually gives this really powerful example about how their team missed out on a pretty big award.
Oh,
Instead of kind of, dwelling on the disappointment, they made a point of celebrating everything they had done to get there, all the work they'd put in.
I like that approach.
What was the impact of that?
Well, it gave him a real psychological boost.
Hmm.
You know,
Huh.
Marie says by focusing on the dedication and the hard work, not just that they didn't win the team, felt re-energized,
Oh.
more united, ready to tackle the next challenge.
So they turned it into a positive.
Exactly. His key point is you've always got to value that effort.
Yeah.
It shows your staff that their work matters no matter what.
So how do you actually do that? How do owners listening take this and bake it into how they run things?
Well, Maurice suggests creating a culture of appreciation.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be complicated.
Like what kind of stuff?
Well, even a quick team huddle after a tough service, just to acknowledge everyone's hard work.
Okay.
Maybe a peer recognition system where team members can shout out each other's efforts.
Like a little kudos board or something?
Yeah, exactly. Those small, sincere gestures that show you value their work can make a huge difference.
Yeah, it's like those everyday things that build up over time.
Right.
So we're talking about team dynamics.
Right.
Maurice also talks about something that's kind of inevitable in a busy kitchen or, a really hopping service.
Yeah.
Tensions.
That's going to happen.
They're going to happen.
Richer.
But he talks about how those can actually be opportunities to grow.
Yeah, he's not about pretending everything's always smooth sailing.
Right.
Kitchens are high-pressure environments.
Yeah.
But Marie says if you handle them right, those moments of tension can actually become turning points.
Okay, I like that.
He has this really simple but powerful rule.
What is it?
Don't go to bed angry.
Don't go to bed angry. I like that.
Yeah.
How does that actually work, though, in like a crazy busy restaurant?
Well, for Maurice, it means dealing with any disagreements or misunderstandings that come up during the day before everyone goes home.
Makes sense.
Because if you let those things fester, they can really breed resentment and just damage your team.
Yeah, you don't want that negativity building up.
No, you don't.
He actually gives an example of this one really, really challenging service they had, followed by a team discussion afterward.
Huh, interesting.
What did they learn from that?
Well, they created this space to openly talk about what happened,
Yeah.
and that was huge.
Okay.
It allowed them to clear the air and improve their communication going forward.
So it wasn't about like pointing fingers.
No, not at all.
Right.
He was about understanding different perspectives and coming up with solutions as a team.
Right. So everyone has that shared ownership. Maurice really emphasizes creating a culture where people feel comfortable expressing their frustrations respectfully.
Right.
He says resolving that conflict quickly, that's key to building trust and getting everyone working together.
So important.
What can owners do to build that kind of environment based on what Maurice has seen?
It starts with leadership.
Okay.
If owners and managers demonstrate that calm, open communication style when things get tough,
Yeah.
it sets the tone for the whole team.
Leading by example.
Exactly. Maurice might suggest some training for managers and conflict resolution skills, or even just quick team debriefs after those super stressful shifts to talk about anything that's still lingering.
Okay, so proactively dealing with things.
Right.
So moving on a bit, Maurice also talks about innovation, but he goes beyond just like new dishes or drinks.
Yeah, he really pushes owners to think bigger about where innovation can happen.
What does he mean by that?
He says innovation shouldn't be limited to just the food and beverage offerings.
Okay.
He encourages you to look at your routines, even the tools you're using with fresh eyes.
So, like, what kind of things specifically?
He uses the example of something as basic as presentation plates.
Presentation plates.
Yeah,
That seems like a pretty small detail.
you'd think so. But Maurice tells this great story about working with a designer to create these new plates that were more modern and more functional.
Hmm.
And he says this seemingly minor change actually got a lot of positive feedback from customers.
Really? Just from the plates?
Yeah, it's about paying attention to every part of the customer experience.
Okay. I'm starting to see what he means.
So it's about constantly looking for those opportunities to improve even the things you might take for granted.
Yeah, those everyday elements of the business.
Right. And Maurice's takeaway here is that innovation doesn't have to break the bank.
Okay.
Sometimes those simple creative ideas are all it takes to really enhance that customer experience.
So where else could owners look for those opportunities? I mean, beyond the menu based on what Maurice is saying.
Well, it could be in streamlining your kitchen processes,
Mm.
maybe changing how you handle orders, or even upgrading your internal communication systems.
So challenging those kind of unspoken routines.
Exactly. It's about questioning the status quo in every area that affects your team and your customers.
And Maurice would probably say, get your team involved in that, too.
Oh, absolutely.
Wow.
Ask them for their ideas on how things can be done better.
Mm.
That not only sparks innovation, but also gives them a sense of ownership.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, it's a win-win.
Now, Maurice also talks about something that can be a little tricky, giving constructive criticism.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
It is, and he's really clear that feedback can either really motivate someone or completely demotivate them.
Right. It all depends on how it's delivered.
Totally.
He says giving effective feedback is a skill you have to work at.
Okay.
Poorly worded criticism can do damage, but constructive feedback can be really powerful for growth.
It's like that fine line.
It is.
So what's his approach?
He has this key principle. You focus on the behavior, not the person,
Okay.
and always deliver that feedback privately. Yeah, that shows respect while still addressing the issue.
Right.
And he also talks about tailoring your approach.
Oh, yeah, because everyone's different.
Exactly.
Mm.
He points out that it's so important to understand your individual team members. What works for one person might not work for another.
Yeah.
So adapting your feedback style to their personality, to how they best receive information, that's crucial.
So how do you do that in practice?
Maurice gives an example of this chef de rang who didn't respond well to very direct feedback.
Mm-hmm.
So Maurice shifted to a more nuanced, less direct communication style.
Okay.
And by doing that, he was able to address the performance issues without making the chef de rang feel discouraged.
So it's about being flexible.
Yeah, and really being attuned to your team's individual needs.
What's the main takeaway there?
Well, Maurice says that when criticism is given, well, it actually boosts motivation and performance.
Okay.
Really highlights how important it is to know your team and how to communicate with each person effectively.
So how can owners and their managers get better at this, based on what Maurice is saying?
Well, he'd probably suggest investing in some training on effective feedback techniques.
Like workshops or something?
Yeah, exactly. It could cover things like framing feedback, positively focusing on specific observable behaviors, and giving people clear ways to improve.
That makes sense.
Role-playing different scenarios can be helpful too.
Oh, yeah, to get some practice.
Right.
Okay, so another point that really stood out to me from Maurice was the idea of offering second chances when mistakes happen.
Second chances.
Yeah, I mean, in food and beverage, things are going to go wrong sometime.
Oh, for sure. Mistakes are inevitable.
It's a fast-paced environment,
Exactly.
but Maurice doesn't see those mistakes as just reasons to punish someone. He sees them as opportunities to learn.
Okay.
So he advocates for giving people a second chance, but he's clear that it has to be a responsible second chance.
So it's not about letting things slide.
No, definitely not.
What does he mean by responsible?
Well, he talks about setting clear expectations moving forward and encouraging the person to really take ownership of what happened.
Yeah.
Which might even mean apologizing to anyone who was affected.
Right. So taking responsibility.
Exactly, and that builds accountability within the whole team.
I see.
He tells a story about a waiter who made a pretty big error.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, and instead of immediately taking disciplinary action, Maurice recommended that the waiter go and make amends directly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and put in extra effort to learn from the mistake.
So what happened?
Well, Maurice says this waiter not only fixed his behavior, but he actually ended up becoming one of the most reliable and respected members of the team.
Wow, that's a great outcome.
Yeah, and by offering that second chance and guiding him to take responsibility, it created this sense of loyalty and commitment.
That's powerful.
Yeah, so what Maurice is saying is that when you show forgiveness thoughtfully, it shows your team that you believe in them.
Makes sense.
And he says that creates loyalty and respect, which are so important for a strong team. So what can owners do to build that kind of framework for dealing with mistakes in a way that helps people grow?
Well, Maurice might suggest setting up clear protocols for handling errors,
Okay.
but the focus should be on learning and improvement, not just punishment.
So like what would that look like?
It could involve analyzing what went wrong,
Mhm.
having open discussions about how to prevent it from happening again, and really celebrating when someone takes responsibility and works hard to fix their mistakes.
So it's about creating that safe space to learn and grow.
Exactly.
Now, one last thing Maurice talks about that might not seem as directly related to running a restaurant, but it's clearly important for team morale.
What's that?
Creating traditions.
Traditions.
Yeah, it's about going beyond those daily tasks and routines.
Interesting.
Maurice believes that traditions are really powerful for building team spirit and a sense of belonging.
Okay.
So what kind of traditions are we talking about?
Well, he suggests celebrating holidays in fun ways. Maybe acknowledging team anniversaries or marking achievements big or small.
Like little milestones.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And he stresses that getting the team involved in creating and organizing these traditions is key.
Why is that so important?
It gives them ownership,
Okay.
it makes them feel valued
Mhm.
and reinforces the idea that they're all contributing to something bigger than just their individual tasks.
It's like building a shared identity.
Right.
He shares a really nice example of their New Year's Eve celebration.
Well, how do they celebrate?
Well, they actually do it a day late.
A day late.
Yeah. But it's become this beloved team tradition.
That's fun. I like that.
Yeah, it's those unique shared experiences that really bond people together.
For sure.
And Maurice's point is that traditions don't have to be fancy or expensive.
Right.
It's the memories you create together that matter.
The shared moments.
Exactly. And those strengthen the whole team.
They do.
So for owners listening, what kind of unique traditions could they start to build a stronger sense of community within their teams?
Well, it could be something as simple as a weekly team lunch
Mhm.
or a monthly employee appreciation award.
Okay.
Even just informal gatherings after service.
Just hanging out.
Right. The key is to find traditions that fit your team's culture and values and give them opportunities to connect.
I love that.
Yeah, it's about fostering those relationships.
Maurice sums up his whole philosophy really well with a simple message.
What's
He
that?
says, together we're stronger.
I like that.
And he reminds us that food and beverage, like any kind of catering, it's a team sport where everyone's contribution counts.
He's so right.
So what are the key takeaways here?
Well, based on his experience, the key elements for building a resilient and innovative team are
Okay.
celebrating effort, managing conflict constructively, fostering innovation, mastering constructive feedback, offering those responsible second chances, and creating meaningful traditions.
And at the heart of it all,
Caring about your team.
caring about your team.
Yeah, that's what Maurice emphasizes. It's
So to all the hotel and restaurant owners out there tuning in to this deep dive, we've gone through some really practical and insightful strategies from Maurice,
we have.
a true expert in food and beverage.
Yeah, he's seen it all.
And it's all about strengthening those teams that are the backbone of your businesses.
Absolutely.
The main message here is that building a successful food and beverage team goes beyond just individual skills and efficiency.
It does.
It really depends on building those human connections, supporting growth, and creating shared experiences that bring everyone together.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So thinking about what Maurice said about your team being the beating heart of your operation, what's one small but meaningful step you could take this week to take care of that heart within your own restaurant or hotel?
Yeah, what's one little change you can make?
It's those consistent, thoughtful actions that really make the biggest difference in the long run.
I agree.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.